Today I have another installment of the Look for Less challenge. Hey there, my name is Yami. I am your Latina next door. Welcome back to Mi Casa, where I share high-end home decor and DIYs on a budget, as well as extreme before and after room transformations. If that's something you enjoy, please make sure to give this video a like and subscribe so that you too can become part of the Familia. So if you're new here and you don't know what the Look for Less challenge is, it's where I challenge you to recreate an item from a high-end home decor store for a whole lot less. Right now, I am hosting this challenge every other month, and if you haven't seen January's video, I'll make sure to link it above and below so you guys can check it out. Before we start, I want to remind you that I'm doing a $500 spring makeover giveaway on my previous video, so if you haven't seen that, make sure to check it out. Now, I invite YouTubers to join in on the challenge each month, and if you want to see everyone else who joined the challenge, I will have a link in my description box below, where you can see the entire playlist of who participated and what they recreated. And if you are one of those participants, make sure you add your video to that link. All right, let's get started with the first Look for Less dupe. So for my first Look for Less dupe, I want to recreate this white beaded Quatro foil wall mirror. The original price is $84.99. Quatro foil mirrors can be found in places like Ross, as well as TJ Maxx, any of those inexpensive home decor stores. You can find them very inexpensively, and you can also find them on Facebook Marketplace. I literally saw one the other day for $25. Mine cost just that. I've had mine for almost 8 years now, and when we moved to this house, I didn't have a space for it, at least not yet, and I just had it in the basement. However, I wasn't really digging the black and gold on it, so I decided to give this one a makeover. Now remember, this can be done with any size and shape mirror. Now I want to protect my mirror, so I'm going to go ahead and apply painter's tape all around so that I don't paint on it. And I'm trying to place it underneath the lip of the mirror so I can make sure and get all of the edges straight down as close to the mirror as possible. Then after I'm done, I'm going to take these half round wooden beads and place them all along the border. These are the 25mm size, and I got these from Amazon, and I'll link to them in the description box below. And all I'm doing here is just placing them for right now. I want to make sure that I get the spacing correct and get everything right the first time. I will have to shift some of these wood beads around, and I don't want to end up at the other side where I have a gap and it just doesn't look right. Many times I've seen people try to use these, and instead of measuring the spaces first and doing kind of a dry run, they just kind of start gluing them right away, and sometimes it doesn't end up being perfectly even on the other side, and you want a professional look on this. At least I do. So putting them down first and making adjustments is priority. So after all of the beads have been laid down and your spacing is nice and evenly distributed, you want to hot glue these down. That is really all you need. And just have to make sure that the surface that you're applying this on has no debris and it's completely wiped down. That way it gets the best adhesion. And all I'm doing here is picking one up and applying hot glue and placing it back down right where it was. Next, I'm taking DIY Paints Dark and Decrepit Liquid Patina. And this is basically a stain and glaze in one. And this is actually the first time I've used this product, and I'm already in love with it. You can apply it very lightly, or you can deepen the color, and it has a beautiful sheen to the finish. I did start off with a rag, but then I wasn't able to get in between those nooks and crannies between each of the wooden half beads, so I decided to get a small artist brush instead. Now if you notice, when I was applying it with a rag, it was actually going on lighter, and now that I'm applying it with the brush, it goes on darker. And if you add on layers, you can deepen the color of this stain, or you can keep it light like I am. The color is a very nice neutral brown. It doesn't shift to the reddish browns, and it's also not a gray brown. It's just a beautiful in between, and I can't wait to use this on another project that I already have in mind. Next, I'm going to take the color White Swan. And I'm just going to take a larger artist brush, and I'm going to start brushing it on both sides of the beads. Now I'm not going for perfection here. The original mirror is very rustic and has a lot of whitewashing and distressing, and that's exactly what I'm going to do with this one. Because I am painting white on black, I will need 2 coats of this white paint. And as you can see, DIY paint is highly pigmented. I will not need any kind of primer for this, even though I am painting white on black. And the only reason I would need to use primer for anything would be in case there was any kind of bleed through, but this is a plastic mirror, so it won't require this. Now all of these paints are available on my online website at thelatinanextdoor.com, and I have the link directly to my shop below. So after the 2 coats are dry, I'm going to go back in with a damp cloth, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet distress it, which is basically rough it on the edges and high parts and remove some of that white paint that I applied. And so once I'm done with that, I'm going to take some of DIY Paint's clear wax, and I'm going to apply it all over the mirror, making sure I get into all of the nooks and crannies. Now if you're happy with how this looks, you can certainly stop here. However, I did want mine to look that worn and more rustic way that the original one looked. I really like that style, so I'm going to add a few more things. After I'm done with the clear wax, I am going to add my white wax. I've had this little sample size for a very long time now, several years actually, and I still have some left over, so this stuff lasts a long time. This one is also available on my online shop. And I'm just going to take a lint-free cloth. I usually have an old t-shirt of my husband's, and I cut little pieces off of them. And I'm just going to be applying it on the outside of each of those beads, kind of getting some of that white wax on it, but not on it completely, so that it looks like the paint is kind of coming up from the sides and the beads are like popping out from the paint, if that even makes sense. I just don't want it to look like the beads are just on top of it. And much like earlier, I started off with a cloth, but then I ended up using a really small brush to apply the wax all around. Then I took a clean brush and I just began kind of brushing everything in order to smooth those edges of where I had painted and make the transition a little bit smoother. And then I would come back in with a paper towel and remove any white wax off the top of the beads. I let this sit overnight, and this is how the mirror turned out. Alright, let's see how we did. The original mirror was $85 online, and I had my mirror for 25 bucks, and I paid $11 for the beads, bringing my total to 36 because the paint that I used for this was very minimal. The white was left over from a previous project, and I have pretty much the entire stain bottle left over. So I'm going to be able to use that again and again and again. But if you wanted to include the paint, then this probably would come around $40 worth total, since I barely used a couple dollars of each of paint. Also, if you haven't done so already, you can also follow me on Instagram at the Latina Next Door. For this next DIY, I'm going to be recreating the small peony hydrangea water bowl arrangement. It's originally $80 for this faux arrangement, which I think is a little bit too pricey, but I do love the colors on the flowers. And I do think it's perfect for spring, since I'm not one to put too many bunnies and carrots everywhere during this time. I like to keep things a little bit more subtle. So I actually went everywhere in search of a nice bowl for this arrangement, and I went to a couple of Goodwills because that's what I have nearby, and their items were overpriced and they didn't have anything that looked halfway decent. So when I happened to be at Walmart getting a few things that I needed, I went to the craft section and I found this beautiful super thick floral bowl, and I just thought it was perfect, and it was only $2.47. At Walmart, I also saw this pretty large bouquet that only cost $5.82, and I thought the colors would be perfect for this piece. And I also picked up some of Elmer Glue's clear glue. So the first thing I did was take my wire cutters and just snip off all of the individual stems from the floral bush. Then I took the Elmer's glue and emptied it out inside of that large glass bowl. And I know it's really hard to tell because everything is clear, but the next thing I did was make a grid pattern on top of the glass bowl opening, kind of like they do at floral shops, so that I can arrange all of my flowers. That way they will stay put after I've inserted them. And then I just started placing my flowers the way I wanted them to look. Now I will say, because the glue is soft, it will not set right away and it will take a very long time to dry. So once you put everything in place, you want to just let it sit and let it dry completely, and it might take several days. Mine still hasn't dried completely as of yet. So you kind of just want to set them and then just leave them and don't touch anything. That way they stay put where you put them. Now I started off with just the big flowers, but then I added some of the smaller ones of the arrangement afterwards, and this is how it turned out. The original piece cost $80 and mine only cost $11. That's including the price of the flowers, the brand new vase, and the glue. So everything brand new really only cost me $11 to get that similar flower arrangement look with that faux water at the bottom. Now if you recall, I made this artisan vase last year and I absolutely love how it turned out. And when I was looking on Kirkland's website, I noticed this amphora squat terracotta vase, and I just knew it was time to add another one to my collection. However, for $70 I think I could do better. So while shopping at Goodwill, I came across this little piece. Now it's not very pretty, and if I was not doing this, I would not have picked it up because they cost $5.99, which I think is kind of ridiculous, especially for the state that it's in. Of course, the couple things that it had going for it was the shape, which I absolutely loved, and the size. I want to be able to put this on like a bookshelf. I didn't want it to be too big. My last one is a little bit larger, so I was going for something smaller. Now, I guess in the end, it didn't matter so much that it had these little nicks because obviously I wanted something that looked like it was aged. So after I sanded it, I began to apply my DIY paint. Now this color is actually kind of like an oops paint color that was sent to me from DIY paint, but you can also get to this type of color with lightening up weathered wood with a little bit of yellow, and it should look pretty similar. So I just began with a large brush, brushing up and down on the pot, making sure I get a really good first coat, and then I began to build on top of it. And as you see me here, I am using my hair dryer to dry as I'm going. DIY paint can dry up in a clay-like finish and kind of clumpy if you want it to, if you apply heat and let it dry really thick. Now, as I was drying it, it was giving me some texture and I was really liking it. So I basically gave it 3 coats while I was brushing it and drying it at the same time. So then I began to add the various colors and texture. And for this I use a stippling brush. I use 3 different colors. I put them on my cardboard, and then what I would do is I would just stipple them on randomly, and these colors are aviary, mint chip, as well as sandy blonde. And I was just trying to match the colors and textures and variations that were in the original picture. Of course, you can add as little or as much as you want, and if you mess up, you can always go back over it again. And I also used the hairbrush to thicken these areas up, give them a little bit more texture, and to speed up the drying process. When I was finally happy and done with all of my texture, I added some of the clear wax as well onto this. And then I actually made a little bit of a mistake. After I did the clear wax, I decided I wanted it to look a little older, so I added some white wax. But then I found that it kind of washed everything out, and that's not exactly what I was going for, even though it did age it. So after I applied this white wax, I decided I was going to smear dark decrepit dust all over it and just use a brush to work it in all of that texture that I had given the vase. Dark and decrepit dust can be used to age your pieces, and the dust just collects in all of the little grooves and any texture that you might have on your surface. I let everything to cure overnight, and the final step was to take a lint-free cloth and buff out all of that wax that I had applied, along with all of those different colors. You can see it's coming off a little bit right there, but that's okay because I am working it into the surface, and that was it for this. Just look at the surface of how this pot looks. And here is how she turned out. So let's see how we did. The original piece was $70 and mine was only $6 at my local Goodwill. Even with the cost of paint though, I barely used anything, so maybe anywhere between $10 and $15 total if you want to include the paint actually used. Well, that is it for this month's Look for Less challenge. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments below which one of these DIYs was your favorite. And don't forget to check out my second channel, The Latinos Next Door, where I share more of daily vlogs, cleaning, organization, and even recipes. Alright, that's it for now. I will see you back next week. In the meantime, I have some videos right here that you can enjoy. Until then, adios!